Every day where the little engines work, the crisp air is suddenly filled with a familiar noise. The lakes and mountains have many visitors, and Harold the helicopter flies the sky, making sure that no one is in trouble. All present and correct. Time to return to base. Then Harold noticed something. A sturdy diesel was coming round the mountain. Harold flew lower for a closer inspection. I'm Harold. Who are you? I'm Rusty, replied the diesel. Don't recall seeing you before. What brings you this way? Sir Topham Hatt sent me to help the other engines, huffed Rusty. This was no time for a chat with a helicopter. Well done. Cheers, and keep up the good work. Cheeky chopper, muttered Rusty. Not long now, encouraged the driver. We'll soon be at the top station. Peter, Sam, and Sir Handel were glad to see Rusty. Even so, Sir Handel wouldn't stop grumbling. The cars didn't like Sir Handel and wanted to play tricks on him. No one understands our feelings, sympathized Gordon. Now, if you were ill, you couldn't shunt cars, could you? Good idea, replied Sir Handel. I'll try it. He did so next morning. I don't feel well, he groaned. There wasn't time to examine him, so some of his cars were coupled behind Peter Sam's coaches. Rusty promised to follow with the rest. Peter Sam didn't mind the extra work. He left his coaches at the station and trundled cheerfully on. Soon they reached the quarry where the cars were needed. Empty cars at the bottom of the slope are hitched to a cable. Loaded ones at the top are hitched to another. By their weight, loaded cars run down the steep slope, pulling the empty ones up. Peter Sam duly waited at the bottom of the slope for the loaded cars. He never bumped cars unless they misbehaved. But the loaded cars couldn't see him properly. They thought he was Sir Handel. Their chance for trickery had come. Faster! Faster! They yelled. No, no, wailed the empty cars. It's Peter Sam! But it was no use. Hurrah! Hurrah! Roared the cars. Peter Sam shut his eyes. Beep! Beep! Wailed Peter Sam. Rusty was working nearby and came to help clear up the mess. Bust my buffers, exclaimed Rusty. Never mind, Peter Sam. We'll get you out. Peter Sam felt battered. His funnel was cracked and his boiler dented. Thank you, Rusty, he sighed and limped slowly home. I'm sorry about your accident, said Sir Handel. I always stand well back. Cars don't like me. Why didn't you warn me? I didn't think. You never do. You can start thinking now while you're doing Peter Sam's work as well as your own. That'll teach you to pretend you're ill. Sir Handel did start thinking about Gordon. When the wreckage was cleared away, Rusty set off along the line. Splendid to see you again, whizzed Harold. I'm completing my evening's lookabout. Well done. Cheers, and keep up the good work. And the little diesel purred back home. Thomas the Tank Engine was feeling very happy. His blue coat shone in the sun, he was right on time, and all around his branch line, the countryside seemed prettier than ever before. Beep, beep. Good morning, Percy, he whistled. My branch is the pride of the line, wouldn't you agree? Yes, Thomas, of course, but... But what, Percy? Out with it. Well, there is another engine with a famous branch line, too. Who? Where? His name's Stepney. He's far away, but Sir Topham Hatt says he may visit us. When? Oh, someday. And Percy hurried away. Meanwhile, Stepney was puffing steadily along his line. It isn't very long, and that made him feel a little sad. Later, he saw Rusty. The little diesel had helped save Stepney from scrap. Everyone's been so kind. But my railway is so short, and I do miss a good long run. I think you should tell Driver, too, replied Rusty. I'm sure he'll understand. Stepney soon discovered that indeed he did. Do you know, Stepney, I feel just the same way. That evening he had exciting news. Guess what, Stepney? Sir Topham Hatt has invited us to visit the other engines on his railway. Manager agreed. It'll be a really long run to get there. Oh, thank you, sighed Stepney. They set off next morning. By now, all the other engines were talking about Stepney. He runs a famous branch line. Did you know that? Said Percy. Thomas was feeling a little jealous. Huh. It may be famous, but my branch is the first on the line. Everyone knows that, too. And he huffed away to fetch his coaches. Look, squeaked Percy. Why have they all come? There's no train yet. But Percy was wrong. The signal dropped, and from far away an engine whistled. Here he comes, yelled Douglas. Stepney puffed proudly through the junction. I hope you'll meet Thomas, too, said Edward. You both have branch lines to be proud of. Then Stepney set off to help Duck shunt coaches in the yards, and they worked happily together all afternoon. At last, Thomas arrived. Sorry, can't talk. It's time for my last branch line train. Mustn't be late. He was hardly out of sight when the engines heard shouting at the station. Moments later came the alarm. Stop all trains! The signalman answered the telephone. A special, is it? I see. Thomas was impatient. Why are we waiting? My passengers are being delayed. Sorry, Thomas, said his driver. We're being shunted to allow another train to pass. Soon they heard an unfamiliar puffing sound. There was Stepney with his headlamp swaying and whistle blowing. He gathered speed and disappeared. Well, bust my boiler, said Thomas the Tank Engine. Next morning he was still fuming. Shunted, and on my own branch, too. It's a disgrace. I'm sorry, said Stepney. I was a special. Why? An important passenger arrived just as you left. He ordered a special train, and Duck let me take it. We had a splendid run, but, finished Thomas, it can make an engine nervous not to know the line. Exactly, said Stepney. You're such an expert. Thomas felt much better. He couldn't be cross anymore and began telling Stepney all about his branch line.
The island of Sodor had many visitors, and Sir Topham Hatt had scheduled more trains. Gordon, the big engine, had to work harder than ever before. "Come on," he called to the coaches. "Come on, come on, come on. The passengers rely on me to be on time." Whenever Gordon finished one journey, it was time for another to begin. "Never mind," he puffed. "I like a long run to stretch my wheels." Even so, Sir Topham Hatt decided that Gordon needed a rest. "James shall do your work," he said kindly. James was delighted. He liked to show off his smart red paint and was determined to be as fast as Gordon. "You know, little Toby," he boasted, "I'm an important engine. Everyone knows it. I'm as regular as clockwork, never late, always on time. That's me." "Says you," replied Toby. Just then Sir Topham Hatt arrived. "Your parts are worn, Toby, so you must go to the works to be mended." "Can I take Henrietta, sir?" "No. What would the passengers do without her?" Toby saw Percy by the water tower. "Don't worry, Toby. I'll take care of Henrietta until you get back." Soon Toby was out on the main line. He clanked as he trundled along. He's a little engine with small wheels. His tanks don't hold much water. He had come a long way and began to feel thirsty. In the distance was a signal. "Good," he thought. "There's a station ahead. I can have a nice drink and a rest until James has passed." Toby was enjoying his drink when the signalman came up. He had never seen Toby before. Toby's driver tried to explain, but the new signalman wouldn't listen. "We must clear the line for James with the express. You'll have to get more water at the next station." Hurrying used a lot of water, and his tanks were soon empty. Poor Toby was out of steam and stranded on the main line. "We must warn James," said the fireman. Then he saw Percy and Henrietta. "Please, take me back to the station. It's an emergency." Henrietta hated leaving Toby. "Never mind," said Percy. "You're taking the fireman to warn James. That's a big help." Henrietta felt much better. James was fuming when he heard the news. "I'm going to be late." "My fault," said the signalman. "I didn't understand about Toby." "Now, James," said his driver, "you'll have to push Toby." "What, me?" snorted James. "Me? Push Toby and pull my train too?" Grumbling dreadfully, James set off to find Toby. He came up behind Toby and gave him a bump. "Get on, you!" James had to work very hard. When he reached the workstation, he felt exhausted. Some children were on the platform. "Coo! The express is late, and it's got 2 engines. I think James couldn't pull it on his own, so Toby had to help him." "Never mind, James," whispered Toby. "They're only joking." "Huh," said James. Toby just smiled. Henry the Green Engine has lived on the island of Sodor for many years. He wouldn't want to be anywhere else. He likes every part of it, from the fields filled with flowers to the white sandy beaches. But there is one place that Henry always enjoyed visiting more than any other. His driver knew this too. "Come on, Henry," he would sometimes say. "We've made good time today. We'll stop for a while by the forest." Henry loved it here. The forest was full of broad oaks and tall pines. Henry could remember the day long ago when he and Toby brought some new trees to be planted, and Terence and Trevor helped haul them into place. Now he could see the trees growing amongst the others on the hillside. Henry always felt better for being here. He couldn't really explain why, but his driver understood. "It's peaceful," he said to Henry. But one night, everything changed. The engines were resting in the shed. "Listen," said Thomas. "Can you hear a strange whistling sound?" "It's the wind blowing outside our shed," replied Toby, "but I've never heard it like this before." "Do you know," added James, "if Gordon wasn't here now, I'd say it was him thundering by with the express." All the engines laughed, except Henry. "I hope the wind won't harm the forest." By morning, the fierce winds had gone, but the damage was done. Henry's driver came to see him in the yard. "Trees have fallen on the line," he said. "We must help clear the tracks." Donald set off with the breakdown train, and Henry followed. Trees lay everywhere. The hillside now looked so bare. Henry felt sad. "What will happen to all the animals who live here?" he thought. When Henry's flat cars were full of logs, he took them to the timber mill where they would be turned into furniture and other things. Henry was glad the wood was being put to good use, but he was still sorry to lose part of his forest. "Oh dear," sighed Toby to Thomas. "I wish there was something we could do to make things better again." "Yes, indeed," replied Thomas. "But what? We can't mend broken trees." "Hello, Toby," said Sir Topham Hatt. "You do look glum." "I'm sad about the trees," said Toby. "And so is Henry. The forest is a special place to him. Now some of it is gone." "We'll soon put that right," replied Sir Topham Hatt. "I have an important job for you, Toby. I would like you to take some freight cars to the forest." When the freight cars arrived, Toby was delighted. They were full of splendid young trees all ready for planting. "This is the best job I've ever had," said Toby happily. When Henry returned, he was most surprised. There were Terence and Trevor busily helping the workmen clear the torn stumps and branches. "Look, Henry," called Terence, "we're beginning again. The hillside will look better than ever before. You'll see." Now, whenever Henry stops by the forest, he can see the new trees growing strong and tall. Sometimes everywhere is very quiet, and at other times Henry can hear leaves rustling or a bird's wing brushing the air. Often he can hear the distant sound of children laughing, and always he is happy here.
boast how big they are. Superior